Hi, class. So what I want to do today is just go over some items and things that we didn't discuss during the Kahoot today. So I'm going to just kind of whip through this PowerPoint Google slideshow, and I'll post the Google slideshow also on Google Classroom. So I just want to kind of go through this and touch upon some things that we didn't talk about today. We did talk about ethics and the definition of ethics, making knowing what is right from wrong and making good decisions. In the workplace, community, healthcare, home, you have ethical behavior just about everywhere you go. Etiquette, the code of proper behavior in a certain area. So ethics, knowing right from wrong. Etiquette is a code of proper behavior. For example, I'm sure many of you have jobs and there is a certain way they want you to answer the phone. Hi, my name is Mrs. Larson. How can I help you? You're not going to say, hey, yeah, So etiquette is proper behavior. So codes, ethics, knowing right from wrong. And etiquette is the code of proper behavior. Professional and ethical behavior is vital to all the safety of residents. And so we talked a little bit about this. We want to keep residents and staff information confidential at all times, and that is including the staff too. You're not going to go out and gossip about your coworkers. Be honest, trustworthy. One thing I'm not sure we mentioned was that we really, as nursing assistants, as nurses, as those in the healthcare profession, it is very unethical to accept monetary gifts and tips. And in most facilities, it is against their policy to be able to do that. And you'll be surprised. There'll be a lot of residents who will want to give you money. So they might hand you a $10 bill and say, thank you for helping me with my bath today, or thank you for helping me eat my dinner today, or whatever. In the Alzheimer's units, a lot of times they'll want to pay you because they don't understand that where they're at and what their environment is. So they'll try to pay you for their meal. We can't accept those gifts, and we cannot accept tips either. Report abuse or suspected abuse of residents, and we talked quite a bit about that today during the Kahoot. More guidelines for ethical behavior. Of course, we're not going to report to work under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Follow your policies and procedures. Do your assigned tasks. Be positive, professional, tactful. Treat all residents with respect and empathy. We've talked about empathy versus sympathy, and above all, be patient, patient, patient. Okay, let's see. This is in your textbook. It's the Nursing Assistant Code of Ethics. So I'm not going to read through each one of them right now, but take a look at that. It is really going to be beneficial to you, and I think you'll have an understanding of some of the other things that are going to pop up in as we go throughout this term and in the course. Okay, we discussed the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act today, OBRA, passed in 1987, written in response to poor care and abuse reported in long-term care facilities, and the minimum set of standards that was set forth. The federal government, again, you'll need to remember this, the federal government has set forth a minimum of 75 hours of training in order to become a CNA. The state of Illinois is 120, and I think I have another slide that talks about that. Yeah. So in OBRA, this is the nurse. Every state is required, if you are going to have nursing care facilities, which every state does. Every state is required by the federal government to have what we call a nurse's aid training competency evaluation program. Here in Illinois, we call it a BNAP, Basic Nurses Aid Training Program. And so different states are going to call it different things. Programs can have anywhere from 75 hours to a maximum of whatever many hours they want. So they could have 200 if they wanted to. Most programs have somewhere in the range of 80 to 150. State of Illinois, we're kind of right in the middle. We have 80 hours for theory, 40 hours for clinical. Together, that's 120. So again, we're well above the federal guidelines or the federal mandates of 75 hours, but we can set our own. And once you've completed that program, you do have to take a test, and you only have 12 months. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Take a look at that. It might be 24 months. No, I think it's 12 months. Hang on just a second. I'm going to pause this so that I can take a double check so I'm not leading you astray, because that law has, yes, you only have a year. You only have 12 months to take your competency exam once you've graduated from this program. So keep that in mind. So the BNAP that's what we call it here in Illinois, Basic Nurses Assistant Training Program. And it's 80 hours of theory and 40 hours of clinical. Also with OBRA then, as we've just said, it's mentioned that the benefits of it and some of the things that have come out of it that were very positive is a recognition through certification and registration. It also, one of the big things it does, it helps describe and define what your CNA scope of practice is. So you are legally protected. If a nurse comes up to you and says, hey, go ahead and give them that medication, you can say that's not within my scope of practice. I can't do that. So it protects you. It provides better uniformity of care. And I didn't mention this in the Kahoot, but a better uniformity of care. So our BNAP program here in Galesburg is the same as the BNAP programs that are in Chicago, is the same as the BNAP programs are in Southern Illinois. So we all are instructed to teach the same content. Now, how we teach it is individually up to us, but they tell us how much content we have to teach and what we have to teach. So we have a minimum set that we have to teach. So everything you get in this class is exactly the same as you would get anywhere else across the state of Illinois. So lots of uniformity of care, which is very good. So if you get a job here, if you move to the Chicago area to go to school or to live with relatives, or you've just decided, hey, I'm leaving the area, you can get a job there and trust that whatever facility that you are working at should be practicing the same as what we have learned here in the classroom and what we practice here in Galesburg, Illinois. Also, one thing I don't think I mentioned either is that you are, as a CNA, you are expected to continue your education in your field. So there are educational standards, and through OBRA, every CNA has to earn at least 12 hours of continuing education. That usually is about 1 hour a month, and at most facilities, they will offer that continuing education, and they will keep track of that record for you. It is your responsibility to keep that continuing education record. Nurses have it. We have to come up with, and we don't have very much here in Illinois. Some states have a lot, but we only have to come up with 20 units every 2 years. So that's really not very many units at all. Teachers have to come up with 20 units also every 2 years, or every year, I should say. And so I've got double duty to do. I've got to do 20 units as a nurse, and then I've got to do a separate 20 units a year as a teacher. My husband has to have 300 every 3 years. That's a lot of continuing education hours. And some of his are called hard hours, which means he has to do this in person. So, and some of them are soft hours, which he can do online or listen to, podcasts or something, and he can get his continuing education that way. If in Illinois, if you don't have your continuing education units, you can be fined hefty amounts. My husband had a friend who was audited, and it's all in the honor system. You keep track of your own, and if the state licensing board calls you and says, hey, we want to audit your CEUs, then you would have to prove that you have taken those CEUs. I keep hard copies, and then I also have a website that I keep track of them on. But my husband had a friend who did not do his CEUs and was audited and found that he didn't have them done. He was fined, I think, $1,500. I mean, it was a lot. Then he had a certain amount of time to get caught up for the year that he'd missed. And then he had to do so many advance for the next year following. So you want to make sure you continue your CEUs and your continuing education when you do that. Okay, and out of the Ombudsman Act, one thing that we really didn't talk about too much today, and I really wanted to hit upon, is the resident rights. This is huge. This is absolutely huge. These rights are identified by OBRA, and they relate to how the resident must be treated while they are living in that long-term care facility. Remember, this is their home, and they have rights in this home just as they would if they lived at their own home. It's to provide an ethical code of conduct for us healthcare workers too. So there is a standard of care. There are things to be expected, and trust me, these residents know what their rights are. So please be very, very familiar with the resident rights. So here they are. And again, we did not talk about this. I have an activity that I do in class with this. It is extremely important that you understand this. So I'm going to see what I can do and how creative I could be to come up with these residents' rights. Hopefully we'll be back in person and we can go over these. But a resident has the right to quality of life. What does that mean? So if they have the right to quality of life, that means that no matter where they are in their life, they have the right to have the best quality. So if this is an 80-year-old who doesn't walk very well, but still can walk, they have the right to be able to maintain that quality, that they still can walk. So it's our responsibility to make sure that they can still walk. So wherever they are in their life, they have the right to remain the best and the highest quality of life that they can. They have the right to services and activity to maintain a high level of wellness. So for example, they have the right to know what services are available. Do you have a beauty shop? Do you have services that are going to help me with my finances? Do you have services that are going to help me with my laundry? So what are the services that are available? They have the right to have the full information about their rights and the services. They have the right to know everything about the services that are in the facility. This is a difficult one too, and sometimes they will remind you, but they have the right to participate in their own care. So if they, and it's really hard, remember I told you to put on that patience cap, you got to have lots of patience. They have the right to participate. If they want to button their own shirt, we got to let them button their own shirt. We will ask them when we're giving them a bath, do you want to go ahead and wash your face and wash your arms? And so we want to offer them the opportunity to participate in their own care. They have the right to make independent choices. So if they don't want to eat the peas, they don't have to eat the peas. If they don't want to take their sleeping pill, they don't have to take their sleeping pill. They can make those own choices. The biggest one here is the right to privacy and confidentiality. And this is a big one. And this is a deal breaker in lots of facilities. If you are not diligent about privacy and confidentiality and care, you can be dismissed from the institution. It happened at seminary. There was a Carl Sandburg student who was working at seminary, and he left seminary and went over to Walmart. And at Walmart, in the lane next to him was the assistant director of nursing. And while he was in line at Walmart, he was complaining to the cashier about his job and about how he had worked and how he had to take care of this resident, and described the resident in pretty full detail. The ADON took it back to the powers that be at seminary, and then that student was not only released, was never allowed back in seminary again, he was released from the program at Sandburg. So please, this is taken very, very seriously. You cannot violate their privacy and confidentiality. And this goes along with, in the facility, we are not allowed to take pictures. We are not allowed, well, our cameras will not be on us. And that is not for me to be mean. And that is not, no, I don't want you to have any contact with your friends. No, I don't. That is for your protection. This actually happened in a facility. There was this was reported at my conference last spring. There was a CNA who was in the bathroom with the resident, was on the toilet, and she went up to take a selfie. So it'd be like, me taking a selfie here, and in the background was the resident. So she took the selfie, Snapchatted it to her boyfriend. He screenshotted it, posted it all over social media. She was fired from her job. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being that person sitting on the toilet and somebody snapped a picture of you? So no, I can't express it enough. Privacy and confidentiality. Dignity and respect and freedom. They have the right to be dignified. So don't let a resident leave the room with oatmeal still on his face. One of my biggest pet peeves is when the CNAs or students or anybody will wheel somebody out of their room after they've gotten out of bed in the morning for breakfast, and their hair is all crazy and sticking up all over the place. That makes me nuts. So make sure, everyone, that when you get done with your resident in the morning, you comb their hair. It looks all so nice, and out they go. They have the right to security of possessions. So this is really important too. And a term that we're going to use, and I think it might come up on another slide, but I'm going to mention it here, is misappropriation. Misappropriation is something that we want to make sure that we're very, very careful about. And that simply means you take somebody's stuff and then you use it for somebody else's gains. So for example, if you got two residents in a room, June and Jane, or whatever their names might be. If June has all these beautiful products from Bath and Body Works, these lovely lotions and body washes, and you use that for the other resident and that's sharing a room with her, that's misappropriation. That's against the law, against the resident rights. We can't do that. They have the right to make sure their possessions are secure so that nobody's going to steal them. They have the right to know that they can have some money and nothing's going to happen to it. They have the right to know when they are being transferred or discharged. We can't go into a resident's room and say, hey, by the way, doctors kicked you out. You're gone. Bye. Out of here. We can't do that. We've got to give them the information. If we're moving them from one room to another, we have to notify them of the transfer and give them ample notice. We can't just go in and move them around. We've got to let them know. They have the right to be informed of transfers and discharges. Oh, and they have the right to complain. And trust me, they will complain. This is the one they have and they feel they have the most control over. So they're going to complain about a lot of things. The room is too cold. The room is too hot. There's not, the food isn't good. That CNA isn't very nice to me. They're going to complain. They have the right to visit. They have the right to see visitors and have the right to have visitors come in, and anytime, night or day, whether that's convenient for us or whether that's not convenient for us. And they have the rights with regard to social services. They have the right to know what the social services are. Do they need help at home if they are just being transferred or discharged? Do they, what social Meals on Wheels, transportation, what social services are available? I can't express to you enough how important it is for you to understand resident rights. This is going to be hit heavy on your CNA exam. Hopefully, when we are back in person here, we will hit this hard again when we are in person, and we can go over it and over it and over it. So please take a look at it and understand it. Okay, we've talked about abuse. We've talked about mistreatment, physical abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse. Here are all the definitions of those. Please make sure you understand which one is which. Sexual, financial, assault, and battery, we've talked about those. Misappropriation of funds, we've talked about. Here are some more terms. I am not going to go through that. Oh, I will talk about false imprisonment, and that is, there's another term for that too. Hang on just a second. Actually, it's on the next slide, it's their involuntary seclusion. But we can't tie them down. We can't threaten them physically and restrain them. We can't. That's considered abuse. That's false imprisonment. They don't want to be restrained. It's unlawful. So we can't do that. Involuntary seclusion is another one. We can't separate somebody from the others against their own will. So, for example, somebody is in the dining room, they can't help it, they're being loud, maybe they have Alzheimer's, maybe they have dementia, maybe they have some sort of, a problem that they are just loud and all the time. We can't take them and put them in their room, shut the door, and leave them secluded. That is involuntary seclusion. That is considered abuse. At seminary, when we are there, we will not take residents back to their room and be left alone. That is against policy there, and there are lots and lots of families who do not want their loved ones left alone in the room. They want them to be with other people, even if it's just sitting around the bird cage or the TV or sitting in the dining room watching other people do activities. They are not to be left alone. Sexual harassment, substance abuse, defamation. You can read all of those. Here are some more that I want to just take a look at so you understand. Remember, you are legally required to report any observed or suspected abuse. You are mandated by law. You are a mandated reporter. And those mandated reporters are just people who are, by law and their profession, are mandated to report any kind of abuse. Actually with vulnerable populations, and I'll talk about vulnerable populations in the next slide, but mandated reporters, police, teachers, nurses, beauticians. I mentioned this in fourth block, and I didn't mention it in first and second block, but beauticians are mandated reporters. What happens when you go get your hair done? You sit and you talk to the beautician, or your nails, or whatever it might be. So they are mandated reporters. By law, now you are a mandated reporter. If you see or suspect elder abuse or abuse of a vulnerable population, you have to report it. A vulnerable population is, and I think it comes up on a slide. I'm pretty sure I have it. Here is some physical abuse symptoms. I'm not going to read through all of them, so please take a peek at them. Make sure that you understand them. More signs of physical abuse, signs of neglect, ragged, dirty fingernails, weight loss, dehydration, soiled clothing, they're not getting cleaned, ripped clothing, strong smell of urine, they're not being bathed, or they're not getting fed, dirty matted hair, so on and so forth. Missing doctor appointments, changing doctors frequently, other things that can be signs of abuse. Here's that vulnerable population that I was talking about, and this also is in your textbook, is a table in your textbook. Elderly, physically ill or disabled, developmentally disabled, mentally ill or disabled, people with communication problems, people who are hard of hearing, people who are blind. My brother is blind, and he had a caregiver come in once, and he is not sure at all what they were doing. He was afraid they were stealing some of his, getting into his wallet and stealing money because he was vulnerable. He couldn't see. And so that they called and requested that aid not come back to them again. So they're vulnerable populations. So take a look at that. If you are suspected, if a CNA is suspected of abuse and it is reported, then when it is reported to the nursing assistant, they are suspended immediately. Usually, typically, and I could say pretty much in almost all situations, they are suspended immediately. The training program and competency evaluation program is notified, and then your name is put under the Adult Protective Services, and they will also be notified. So then once that happens, there will be a full confidential investigation. Nothing will be disclosed to anybody else. It's confidential. The facility will protect the resident and the person who reported it. So they're from retaliation. So if I reported that Susie was abusing a resident, I am also protected. So nobody can retaliate against me for accusing or reporting Susie as being somebody who is going to be abusive. If the investigation proves no claim of abuse, you can return back to work. The CNA returns back with loss of pay. So if they were off for a day or two or however long they were off, that pay is compensated to them. They will get that pay back. If it is that it might be true, then specific actions are taken. And if you are found guilty of abuse, your name is put on the healthcare worker registry. And once that name is on there, the facilities, nursing homes and nursing care facilities, they check that registry before they hire anybody. And if you are on that registry, you will never, ever work again. I guarantee it. We talked about an ombudsman. So here are the things that he does or she does. We've talked about keeping information confidential, and we talked about that in the Kahoot a little bit. And then also we mentioned it earlier as a resident right. So we talked about HIPAA. PHI, I didn't mention it in the Kahoot, but PHI is protected health information. So these are the things that are protected. Name, address, telephone number, medical record, social security number, and addresses, along with diagnosis and all of that. 2009, we had to take it a step further, and the high-tech law was passed. EHR was established, high-tech health information technology for economic and clinical health, and then electronic health records is a big deal. So it goes right along with that confidentiality. And so PHI, protected health information to keep confidential. Here are the things not to do. Please do not give out health information over the phone. Absolutely not, unless it's only approved staff members. And as a CNA, don't do it ever. Let the nurse take care of that. That's their responsibility, not yours. That is way above your pay grade. Do not give out personal information to visitors. Don't share medical records. Don't discuss residents in public areas. I've already mentioned an example of that. And don't bring your family or friends to the facility. You're going to see this done a lot, but really it's for your own protection. Don't do it. You can't trust that a friend of yours is going to not say something and break that confidentiality, and you'll be responsible for it. If you're faxing something, double check it, return charge to their place. Don't leave a chart laying. If you were taking notes, and you leave it lay around and it gets into the wrong hands, you are violated the confidentiality. If you take notes, we're going to be at the facility and you're going to check blood pressure and vital signs, and you're going to take notes at the facility on your handy dandy note pocket that you're going to have, notepad that you're going to have. If you leave that in your pocket and we bring it back here to the classroom or you take it home, you have violated Privacy Act. So please, we have to dispose of all those, put things back, throw things away, put charts back, don't let anything sit out there. Okay, if you were on a internet or web browser at the facility, and you will see most of the charting is done on a computer that are hanging on the walls at seminary. Log out of your browser. Don't include information in emails, and we cannot, as I mentioned earlier, we can't take pictures, we can't tweet it out, we can't put it on Facebook, we can't put it on Instagram, we can't put it on Snapchat. So please, please, please you will not have your phone there. Okay, serious penalties, and I mean serious penalties. If you are accused of and are convicted of violating HIPAA, you can spend time in a federal prison, not in jail downtown at Knox County, but in federal prison. The feds don't mess around with this. They take it very, very seriously. So please we will talk again more about it. And when we get to seminary for clinicals, Bev is going to give you some more information on that as well. We talked about advance directive. This came about in 1990, the Patient Self-Determination Act, and in that requires all healthcare agencies that receive Medicare and Medicaid money that they have to inform everyone of their advance directives. And what the advance directive is, similar to a living will, durable power of attorney, and then a do not resuscitate, it expresses to healthcare workers exactly what you want done if you can't speak for yourself. So thanks for bearing with me. And that is just a little bit more of what we missed today and that we didn't get to talk about in the Kahoot. So please take a look at this, make notes of this, read your chapter, do your exercises, review questions at the end of the chapter, so that you can have a pretty good understanding of everything that's going on. So thanks, and until next time.